Moving the needle on founder failure, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Lucas Poles, and welcome to Startup 2.0 by Spark XYZ. Join us each week as we give you access to some of the top investors and entrepreneurs around the country to help you think through and overcome some of the top challenges that startups face.
I think there's no better place in the country to be investing than Los Angeles.
What is the problem that you're solving and for who? Like, what is that specific pain point?
Sometimes when a company is not listening to its customers and just thinks it knows better than its customers, has a really, really hard time finding product market fit.
I want to see somebody that isn't going to stop. You know, this person, you just feel like they're gonna make it work.
Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Really appreciate the breadth of experience that you've been able to bring to us today. And so,
Lucas, time out. Breadth of experience. That sounds like I'm old. Careful.
We're already going to have to do a cut because I'm already messing up. But
No, it's supposed to be fun. This is going to be your best interview ever.
Oh, I'm very excited. Okay. With that, not old, short breadth of experience. Let's talk about your background.
Yeah. So, just to keep it simple, I think about my professional career kind of in three chapters. So, chapter one, went to business school at Harvard, studied engineering at Dartmouth, was going to become a corporate titan. And one of my goals was to take a company public, and super fortunate to get, connected to the right, I'll call it a spin out versus a startup. And literally 5 years into that, we had taken a company public, and it was kind of a technology services company. And I really fell in love with the technology versus the corporate. Mm-hmm. So then committed the next really 15 years of my life of building ventures. Spent time, running a number of venture-backed companies. Worked at Idea Lab. Was very fortunate to be involved in, I think, what is our most successful company called Overture Services that invented paid search, mm-hmm. which is, as we all know, the monetization engine behind Google. And then kind of still in my venture path, ran a venture fund with some business school buddies called Momentum Ventures. We invested in maybe 18 tech analytics-driven companies, mostly in B2B. Took active roles in the board, kind of had to jump in as management. And then, so that was kind of the end of chapter two. And then chapter three is really focused on community impact work. So I felt, have benefited so much from Southern California and love the region, though it's not without its flaws. Really felt as somebody who had found their way here. It's time to give back. So I wear two hats now. I'm a part-time elected official. I'm the vice mayor of the City of Pasadena, a city council person. But my day job is running the Alliance for Southern California Innovation, and hopefully get a chance to talk about that. So that's pretty, lots of experience. I'll agree with that. Different experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll definitely be diving into some of the VC stuff after, especially your transition from operator to VC. But let's start with SoCal Alliance. So let's walk through it. What is it? What is its goals?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know, like me, you share kind of great enthusiasm for what is going on in Southern California. And Southern California has come a long way. I remember, 15 years ago when I was in the startup world, literally I could name every VC, and count them on two hands. It was a very small community, and we've come a long way since then. And we've kind of, and by most measures, kind of number three in terms of innovation ecosystems in the United States after Silicon Valley, and we're kind of a close second to New York. You may have seen in the most recent NVCA Venture Monitor that Southern California now kind of matched the Bay Area in terms of dollars of venture capital deployed in our region, close to 20 billion.
Yeah.
So we're literally probably 10 or 20x where it was, 15 years ago, which is great progress. That being said, when you look at the incredible richness of Southern California, from its extraordinary research institutions to its, a large population, probably by many measures the largest of engineering talent, engineering PhDs. We produce, by far actually more entrepreneurs than the Metro New York area, not quite Silicon Valley level, but I think we don't quite punch at our weight class is the way I like to describe it. Another analogy is, kind of we're an 8-cylinder engine operating on 5 cylinders.
Yeah.
And so how do we get, that engine or that capability to really get realized so that we can be kind of the global leader that I think we have the potential to become. And I think of innovation as really kind of the fuel to problem solving. And it could be, I see you have a space in the background, like, how do we help bring, civilization to new planets? Like, how do we solve mobility problems? How do we solve biochemistry? And, there's so many capabilities that innovation or so many problems innovation can address. I think Southern California has, all those ingredients, and, we do a decent and respectable job and a better job, but I think we're far from where we'd like to be. So the Alliance's mission is really to think about the region from that lens, and what are the kind of opportunities to kind of put those pieces together, right? Kind of, I think of the ingredients, how do you make a cake? Like, if you have the great ingredients, if you want to create something really extraordinary, you need to blend those ingredients. And so we're that super connector, right? That kind of inventories and connects and hopefully energizes and catalyzes the region. And we do that really through, a partnership model, right? So there's no way that, a small not-for-profit organization is going to move, a $1.4 trillion economy and 20 million people.
Yeah.
So it needs to be very much a leverage model. So we, work across stakeholders, and initially it was focused on the R1 universities, and Janet Napolitano, who was then the chancellor of UC, was very active in our early formation, and we brought in obviously great institutions like USC and Caltech and the Claremont colleges, because a lot of IP comes out of that, intellectual property innovation.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make into products and companies, right? That's missed opportunities. So we originally kind of started with our focus there, and now have expanded the lens to kind of unifying, I'll call it kind of leading innovation corporations, so the Disneys, the Warners, the Pimcos, the Amgens, the Edwards, the Kaisers, the Edisons, those are all key partners of ours, primarily their chief innovation and chief technology officers. And of course, this all kind of targets against entrepreneurs and startups. And they are a number of tremendously important organizations that support startups across Southern California. You could think of, in San Diego, there's Connect, in Orange County, there's Octane, in UCI, Beal Applied Innovation. Here we have Lava and Never. So they're all kind of very localized, but they're all fragmented. So we work very closely with those organizations and also the investors. So as you're aware, we have a program that we recently announced, bringing top venture capitalists together. And so if we could kind of weave that fabric together, right, we think that is the magic of kind of Southern California. Is we have the threads, but it's not kind of woven into a fabric. And so by getting people to kind of share a vision and excitement around the region, we think we have an opportunity to kind of, once again, elevate it and kind of create opportunities for all of us, like kind of, an amplification model.
Yeah. No, it's super, it's obviously great work. I think that there are, what's the best way to put it? You're right. The ecosystem is hyper fragmented.
It's also diverse. I think if it was all in one place and very homogeneous, then we wouldn't need an alliance, right? Yeah. But when you're really spread out and you're very diverse and you're kind of working in your own little bubble, it's hard to get collective impact. And I think, really great innovation is a highly collaborative activity. And so because of just the nature of the landscape, you need to have intentionality, and we're kind of like an organization that brings intentionality of bringing those pieces together.
Yeah, which I find super interesting. And it's great that, I mean, even you looking at like Southern California, right? So LA and San Diego, but even just in LA, there are different pockets. Like Pasadena has its own pocket, LA has its own, or like Santa Monica has its own pocket. And so there's definitely a lot of work to be able to bring them together, but definitely
I think it's kind of like, and we're really fortunate, as you know, we have Boston Consulting Group as a strategic partner. We're one of their largest pro bono clients in Southern California, and some early kind of heat mapping work you did they did just is really on point with what you just said, is that Southern California is not one place, it's a network of places. And they identified, I think it was 14 innovation centers of excellence. And what's cool is that they all have their own DNA, right? They're kind of complementary, not competing, but they operate independently. So if we can elevate what's happening in those communities, and innovation happens in a place, in a WeWork or a lab or in a coffee shop, but they kind of don't necessarily connect together to get critical mass. So we're kind of that glue that takes all those micro communities, help stand them up if they're not there, activate them, and then connect them into a powerful network. So really kind of interesting model. And as an engineer, like how do you use this kind of a systems model, right? And a systems problem. And we want to be that kind of that connector, or that glue that makes the system work.
Yeah. So I guess that brings me to another thing that you just previously mentioned around universities. So from my perspective, I think that the IP that comes out of the universities is a really big mess that I feel like we've had for a while, and I feel like the universities are slowly starting to wake up, that they're throwing out all of this IP and not getting anything really back for it. What are you doing specifically kind of with them to kind of bring them into the fold to help drive a lot of those innovation changes?
Yeah, and we are fortunate to have kind of that richness in terms of number of research universities. Those universities receive somewhere between $6 and $7 billion of grant-funded research, and amazing breakthrough intellectual property is created there in laboratories at UCLA and UCSD and all this stuff. And the question is, how do you productize that, right? How do you get it out? And it's a little bit like if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, do you hear anything? And if a great idea is solved, but no one takes the intellectual property and creates a business or a product, it's like opportunity missed. So two things that we do specifically in that area. One is we run a annual kind of big innovation showcase called First Look SoCal, where we source, it tends to be 60 to 70 teams across Southern California, and they're teams that are built on intellectual property coming out of research universities that are prepared to spin out, right, ready to be companies. And for every team, there's probably 50, 100, 500 projects going on. So these are ones that are kind of getting to be incorporated and have maybe someone dedicated. It could be a postdoc or someone like that. So we choose from those 60 or 72 teams, we choose 30 over a 2-day period. We showcase those to investors in First Look SoCal. That's episodic, it happens once a year. Recently, because of that, we found, and we heard this from our corporate members, is that they found that interesting, but maybe they only saw one company that was doing robotics or AI, and those are their interest areas. So we recently launched a program called Strategic University Research Expo, where we on a monthly basis thematically search those same 15 or 20 universities and R&D centers around a theme, and bring out qualified teams to showcase on a very specific topic. So we just did one on VR AR. We're doing one on applied robotics. We alternate month to month on life sciences. So we have one on small molecule oncology. In the life science track we do with a group called, Biocom, because there's subject matter expertise. So the challenge of those things, it's kind of a matching process. Like that could really be great through innovation on, let's say, space exploration, but you're a software company. So part of our kind of magic, I hope, is to have a big enough network that we can, target those matches, right? In this case, intellectual property to people who are trying to solve specific problems. So those are two examples around trying to create pathways of breakthrough innovation to get out of universities into the hands of companies, startups, people who can translate that know-how into impact, right? Products that change the world.
Yeah, no, that's honestly, it's very fascinating. Definitely getting after it. Well done. Okay, so you're very good at seemingly addressing specific problems within the actual ecosystem. So what are some of the additional gaps maybe that you actually see within the ecosystem right now that that you're maybe targeting to fill as we kind of progress over the next couple of years?
And I think, you've seen this, you've been around the ecosystem, since kind of the center of gravity actually moved a bit. I'm in Pasadena, and, not to really date myself, but, I'm going to sound like Al Gore, but the commercial internet was kind of invented in Pasadena when you think of the history of Earthlink and City Search and eToys. Those were like Idea Lab. I mean, it was, 1.0. I think when we got through the Great Recession, which now with the pandemic, I know it's like, what's the next thing called? The center of gravity around kind of tech innovation moved to Silicon Beach.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is recognizing that innovation is happening across the region, right? You go down to El Segundo and you go to, there's the Starburst Accelerator and Techstars Space down there, and you go down to Orange County, and the med tech work that's being done down there is extraordinary. I mean, so I think getting people to understand that kind of diversity and richness and really distributed nature of innovation, I think people get it, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to go to the place. And I love Silicon Beach, but it's only just kind of the tip of the iceberg with respect to the story. And I think we have a very diverse ecosystem. And I think because of that, it's hard to characterize. And one of the challenges we have and we're working on is, how do you tell the Southern California innovation story? Because it's not as simple, we just do software. It's we do right? So how do you come up with a moniker? And I think it's really about diversity and convergence, right? You can't have convergence if everything is the same, right? For us, we have all these areas of expertise. And I think it makes that kind of cross-pollination of, how does AI fit here? How does digital health work in a healthcare system? So I think we're kind of more looking for horizontal problem solving across different industries because we're not homogeneous in that way. And that's, that's a harder story to tell them. We just do, San Diego has a great reputation in biotech, but they also have a great reputation in wireless, right? In defense. I think as humans, we like to simplify this story, and Southern California is not really a super simple story. And finally, I'd say, access to capital. As I mentioned, the region had a great year, but only, probably 10 or 12% of that capital came from local funds. And I think, and you're in the investment business, that relationships really are critical in terms of building ecosystem, community support, mentoring. So hopefully over time, we'll figure out how to get more of the capital that goes into great companies coming from local investors. We've had a number of large funds recently announced, as Sinai, March has a new fund, Graycroft has a new fund.
Yeah.
I know Upfront's working a large new fund. So I'm hoping that with more capital here, we'll kind of, I don't want to say be self-contained and insular, but I think create a little bit more of continuity of capital availability within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think access. Like I do think we have a very diverse community, and we have great innovators in places like Riverside or South Central. And I think being intentional about creating on-ramps to include those groups and those bold thinkers in the innovation process and ecosystem is imperative. And our mantra is diversity in Southern California is superpower.
Yeah.
We have to practice that, not just say that, right? And I think access and availability is an important part of that. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but I'm bullish. Like I think we've come a long way, and I think these are kind of next generation challenges, and I know that the region is up for tackling those. And I laud things like Pledge LA. I think is an incredibly important piece of work, and love working the Annenberg Foundation on that. And there are people who are really leaning in. Always in terms of female venture capitalists and their chapter down here, and Eva Ho and Karen Ortman. Once again, I'm really Anna Barber. I think we really are pushing ourselves to walk the talk.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's honestly one of my favorite things about Southern California is the actual diversity, simply because it creates such differentiated products, but then you also don't have, it's a great testing ground for understanding what people actually want, versus maybe just a simple bubble, which happens a lot in Silicon Valley. That's how.
Absolutely correct. You gave me an opportunity to quote one of my favorite people in Southern California. So Frances Arnold, you may know, won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry about a year and a half ago. The first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And her whole kind of innovation was around using biodiversity to solve problems.
No.
So you think about kind of survival of the fittest, but you need to have diversity of around how things are working to find better solutions. And so she sees diversity as kind of the fuel for innovation. And I think Southern California has that fuel. And once again, I think long-term, it will be our competitive advantage. It's a little harder to get everyone lined up and we're all so different. So I think, Silicon Valley was a little bit more homogeneous. So they got kind of up and running and sprinting faster. But once we get kind of our more complex organism kind of running on all 8 cylinders, I think we're going to be a true juggernaut.
Yeah, no, so do I. It's been wild to watch the evolution of LA, because like I'm one of the few people actually from LA, and I remember I think it was like probably 2011, 2012, someone told me like, oh, Silicon Beach. I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like, and so it's been an interesting, and a wild but very positive shift on the ecosystem as we've kind of graduated into that top 3 run through, and soon to be top 2. We're going to take down New York soon.
I think we are.
Oh man! So I guess let's jump back. I guess back to a little more of your experience as we kind of run through. So you've been an operator. You've done venture. Maybe what are some of the lessons learned from seeing both sides of the table?
Also, to provide a little logic behind the path is that if you love innovation, you need to be an innovator, right? And you do that as a entrepreneur individually. And then I think about like a VC, you do that in a portfolio. And really my passion for ecosystem building is you think about the highest level in terms of enabling innovation, you create the circumstances and conditions in which innovation can happen. So I kind of feel like that is a little bit the progression I think about in terms of being a champion for innovation. I love, when I ran companies and, I was always super passionate. I always tell entrepreneurs, especially if you're the founder, like you got to believe in what you're doing. Like if it's, some business idea that you kind of came up with because it was, an exercise, a thought exercise versus something that's internalized. Often that won't get you there just because, the entrepreneur journey is a very difficult one. And if you're not deeply motivated to kind of slay all the dragons and get over all the hills, unless you happen to get extremely lucky, you probably won't make it. You'll give up belief, and so you have to be a believer, right? And I think that's one of the big challenges, honestly, for entrepreneurs is you got to be all in, right? To kind of, I think, to build a transformative company. And I'm not talking about a copycat, but something that says, hey, I'm going to do this in a different way. And sometimes you're wrong, right? And maybe more often than not, you are out wrong, right? Just statistically. And so when do you figure out whether you are just wrong or you just haven't tried enough times?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know the answer to that because, Edison, he didn't fail, 1,000 times. He just figured out 999 ways not to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to figure out whether, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree or whether you just haven't tried enough times. But that's the key challenge that and I'm still involved in companies and I'm still passionate about problem solving, but I never kind of figured out what the right answer was.
Yeah.
And because at some point, if you're wrong, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You actually should be working on the next one.
Yeah.
But if you're, as soon as it gets hard, if you bail out, like shit, you're never getting anything done anyway. Right. So what is that balance? So that would be, one observation from the entrepreneur side. From the VC side, truth be told, I loved being a VC in the sense that I really loved helping entrepreneurs. And as a byproduct that I probably wasn't a very good VC because I hate to say VCs really need to value their time and kind of, it's gonna sound a little cruel, but kind of drown the puppies in the sense of, most of them don't make it. And I'm so empathetic to entrepreneurs that I'm like, Lucas, I'm going to help your company succeed. And like, I really should be not helping you and investing in 3 new companies.
Yeah.
So it was very hard for me to not be overly empathetic with entrepreneurs just because I value, they're the ones who build great companies, right? And I know how hard it is. And I know how much they put themselves out there. So I think it's a balancing act to be a good VC to kind of, pick great entrepreneurs, but also, you can't hold them up or you can't kind of do the work for them. It's kind of a little bit of a Darwinian game. It doesn't mean you have to be an asshole about it, but I think it was hard for me to, let go of entrepreneurs and not feel like I was at their side trying to win the battle.
Yeah.
And then I think kind of ultimately as someone who's kind of looking at the ecosystem, I think what's incredibly compelling about Southern California is because it's diverse. We don't feel like we're competing. Like we feel like we're kind of looking at things from a different angle. So as a byproduct of that, there is a natural inclination for almost everybody to kind of be part of a bigger conversation, like part of a bigger effort. And if you're, kind of fighting for the same oxygen because you're doing the exact same thing and you're kind of, it's a zero-sum game, then I find people are not nearly as collaborative. So I think people have kind of come to realize that we have a huge opportunity here, and as a byproduct that are leaning in together and don't see this as a competitive situation, but see it as a kind of a mutual benefit and kind of we're going to raise all boats, and is really great to see. And I think it's frankly somewhat unique to an ecosystem that's this far evolved, where people really are looking to help everybody, right? Kind of expand the tent.
I think that's one of the biggest advantages that we have over Silicon Valley, because I've seen Silicon Valley VCs do some crazy things because there's just too much capital up there. And so I've seen someone add like founder B on LinkedIn so they could find founder A and invest in them, and just some insane things. Whereas like in LA, we all pass deals back and forth to each other. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about investing in so-and-so. What have you heard? Maybe you want to invest too. Maybe we'll go through and bring in a couple other people and fill around. But it's very open and I don't know, it's not aggressive or hateful the way that it can be. It absolutely can be up north. And so
I think teamwork, I think kind of like, if you have superstars, then you kind of forget teamwork. And certainly Silicon Valley is, has a lot of superstars, whether they're entrepreneurs or VCs. And here, I think we have a lot of hardworking, capable people who are trying to achieve an opportunity together, right? And I think it's difficult for that collaboration because we're so spread out, and that's where kind of our role comes in, is to try to shrink the distance.
Yeah.
And we have by bringing people together, and we have a digital platform, and we're working on an umbrella brand strategy. It's all about kind of unifying the pieces, right, to get collective impact, not standardizing, not trying to make them homogeneous, but trying to kind of put them together in a compelling way. I think about it, it's like a mosaic, right? You can have all the pieces and all the colors are there, but if you kind of sort them, like, oh wow, this is amazing. And I think that's our view of Southern California.
Have you seen as a semi, as maybe one of the silver lining of COVID, in that LA is very difficult to get around. It will take anywhere from an hour and a half to go to an event. Have you seen maybe the collaboration or the ease of collaboration increase because we've been forced to all be online at this point? Has any of that happened, or not so much?
Definitely. And I have to tell you that my car came off lease in December, and I was going to make the move to electric. And right now I don't have a car because I'm literally not driving anywhere. I kind of picked out the car and I was going to order it. I'm like, my last car sat in my garage for 11 months and had 500 miles on it. So we were happy to get the lease back because the last 10,000 miles weren't used. So we aren't sitting in traffic is your point. And I think the virtual world does shrink the geography. Right. You're West Side, I'm Pasadena, we have people in San Diego, we have Riverside. And so I think there's going to be a silver lining, and I hope there's going to be kind of a long tail on some of that. I do think collaborations in relationships, I should say, still benefit from having some time together, in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
So my hope is we'll see some sort of hybrid model. Where, before it's like, hey, Andy wouldn't come out and see me, so that means he doesn't respect, what I'm doing. It was kind of judgmental, like you had to cross the Rubicon to, show that you were worthy. But I think people realize that that's kind of silly. So I think that kind of requirement will go away. It's a little bit like FaceTime in an office. But I am eager, and I think our work will benefit from, reintegrating in-person activities, into the portfolio, right? Not making it exclusive. And I think we're, this will rebalance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's been great, especially for a place that's so big and spread out, to really embrace, virtual connectivity and platforms, like Zoom.
Yeah. I have found that during this time, we've had to be much more intentional with our networking or the conversations that we end up having, because whereas before we go to an event, we'd see like 5 or 10 people that we hadn't seen in a month, and we just catch up, and it's just very easy. Whereas now it's like, okay, I have to have some intentionality behind this to actually chat with someone. I remember talking to a friend of mine that's a Series A fund, and we ended up talking for an hour a couple of weeks ago, just because we hadn't caught up in a while. And so being very intentional during this time, I felt is also makes you appreciate the conversations that you're having.
And I think from my experience so far, and I've tried different tools and been involved in different platforms, that kind of serendipitous networking is difficult to replicate.
Yeah.
So I think, it needs to be intentional. I think if I were to critique myself, I'm probably more productive in terms of being intentional in building network, but because I don't bump into the people I already know, like as a byproduct of being out there, I think some of my kind of existing relationships probably have suffered a little bit, because that kind of, I saw you at an event with 10 other people.
Yeah.
That would take 10 phone calls, right? And 10 Zoom meetings to see those people. So that's probably suffered. So I need to get my ass back out in the field. It's not been vaccinated.
Oh gosh. So I want to switch topics, I guess, a little bit. We talked a little bit about bringing IP out of universities, but something that has always kind of plagued me, and you definitely touched on it earlier, was this idea that we graduate, USC, Caltech, UCLA, we graduate more engineers than anyone else in the country. What is your vision, or how do we end up keeping these people in LA rather than just going up to the Bay or maybe to New York? Like, how do we just hold on to them?
So and there is a study, I think you probably saw it. I can't remember, it's one of those big, I don't know if it was ZipRecruiter or one of those big online platforms that track kind of talent placement. And if you look at graduating STEM students, Silicon Valley keeps 85% of their students, and we keep, 35%. Obviously, a place like Boston, which is really just a university town, doesn't have that many jobs, maybe 35%, they're even less, but that would make sense. I think we like to believe Southern California is, a job center. So, there is a discrepancy between, where the talent's grown and, where it's kept. And we should have a natural advantage because, I hate to say Southern California is a pretty good place to fall in love with.
Yeah.
Not today, because it's one of the 10 days a year it rains. But we do a poor job. I think we do a poor job. And I think part of that goes back to that branding discussion I was having is and I've helped kids get jobs locally, and part of it is they don't even know the jobs exist. So, when they think, hey, I want to be in tech, people equate tech to Silicon Valley. And I think we need to let them know that, if they're going to, want to be in entertainment, they assume they're staying in Los Angeles. Yeah. So I think we need to, educate the students that, the universe is diverse, as we just said. And, ironically, there's, more tech jobs in Southern California than there are entertainment jobs. But entertainment has a natural advantage because they're consumer oriented, right? Everyone knows what's happening in the world of entertainment. Most people don't even know SpaceX is in Southern California, right? And it's one of the largest, most valuable tech firms in the world.
Yeah.
I said, it's like a Jimmy Kimmel question, where is SpaceX? And I'm sure, no one would get it right. So I think we have to get the word out that we have amazing tech companies. One of our partners, Amgen, which is one of the, most amazing biotech companies in the world, is, here in Los Angeles. Edwards, one of the most amazing med tech companies. Alteryx, $10 billion market cap AI company in Orange County. I mean, you go to the West, but they're not household names.
Yeah.
And when you're graduating and your mom or dad are maybe paying your last tuition check, and they're like, Lucas, where are you going? You say, I'm going to, Alteryx. They're like, never heard of that. Like, why aren't you going to Apple? Right? Why aren't you going to Microsoft? So I think we need to have a few more success stories here. And going public is a good way to kind of publicize companies. And obviously SPACs are a rage, and that's probably a whole nother conversation. But having more brand name companies that grow here in Southern California, making graduates more aware of them. I mean, honestly, I've seen this in the 15, 20 years I've been in Southern California. Even in the tech world, we weren't building brand named platform companies. We were building product companies that got scooped up. Yeah. So there was no real big company to kind of affiliate with it anyway. Yeah. So I think as we see, some larger companies raise capital, I use, Snap as a good example. That's great. I mentioned Alteryx. They've hired 5 of their 8 senior people from Silicon Valley who are coming down here. Yeah. So I just think it's an awareness and, scale problem. And I say, branding sounds kind of simple and magic wandy, but I think as we get more success stories and celebrate those stories and push those to, young, energetic graduates, that will do a much better job keeping them here. But at the same time, they pay a huge amount of money, right? I was, reading how much a 10-year Facebook engineer makes. It's like, whoa, maybe expensive in Silicon Valley, but if you're getting paid that much money, you could probably survive. So it's going to be hard to compete on, I think, dollars and cents. Mm-hmm. But I think for people who love the Southern California lifestyle and the diversity, as you said, like we need to do better. We will do better. We can do better. And I think, I'm having some consistency to make that a reality. We'll move the needle.
Awesome. Well, definitely great. And I guess final thoughts, and where can people discover more about the Southern California Alliance?
Yeah, so alliancesocal.org, we're not for profit. And, we are working with, so many groups, and I said the venture community is really excited about our work, and corporates are too. And, and the universities, right? Those are, as I say, our job is to make elephants dance to the same tune. If we're going to move an ecosystem, it's not a, 6-7 person not-for-profit that's going to make any difference. But if we can get collaboration across the ecosystem, people kind of pulling, the oar in the same direction, the capability of this region is, is kind of earth-shattering. And it's exciting to be part of it. And, check out the Alliance and, come to First Look, or, be an activist. Think about yourself not just as someone being an innovator and entrepreneur, but think of yourself as part of a bigger community, right? And I think it's that mindset that says, we are building Southern California, and I'm part of that, right? Yeah. This podcast, the work you're doing as an investor, all that stuff adds up. Yeah. And if we can kind of put those on the same vector, like this is, watch out, New York, you're going to be in our rearview mirror, because we're going to be the sure number 2 here in innovation in North America.
No, 100%. Really appreciate you coming on the show, and look forward to the great work that you're doing as you continue.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for the work you do. And, we're along SoCal, so we're going to be right. Trust me.
Awesome.